Linda Martinez stood in her hydroponics bay, carefully checking the growth patterns of the latest tomato crop. The artificial lights cast a soft purple glow across the rows of plants that would help feed both humans and aliens on New Eden Colony. She smiled as she noticed the first tiny green fruits beginning to form. The door slid open with a gentle hiss, and a tall, silvery-skinned Zaxrith named Kellera entered. Like all of their species, Kellera had 4 arms and moved with fluid grace. "Good morning, Linda. The sprouts in my section are showing signs of nutrient deficiency. Could you help me adjust the mineral balance?" "Of course," Linda replied, grabbing her tablet. She had learned long ago that the Zaxrith's formal manner of speaking didn't mean they were being cold or distant. It was just their way. Over the past 3 years, she had taught many of them earth farming techniques, while they shared their advanced hydroponics technology. As they walked to Kellera's section, they passed other workers, both human and Zaxrith, tending to different crops. The massive hydroponics facility was the heart of New Eden Colony, providing food for the settlement's growing population of 15,000 souls. Linda's husband, Peter, was probably fixing something in the environmental control systems right now. He always seemed to know exactly when equipment would fail before it happened. The other maintenance workers joked that he had a sixth sense about machines. If only they knew his background, how his sixth sense came from years of high-stakes missions where equipment failure meant death. But that was the past. Now Peter Collins was just another colonist, happily blending in with the crowd. He fixed things, played cards with friends on weekends, and loved his wife. The fact that he had once been part of humanity's elite special forces, or that he had helped establish first contact with the Zaxrith, wasn't important anymore. Linda adjusted the mineral feed rates in Kellera's section while explaining the changes. "See how the leaves are slightly yellow at the edges? That means they need more iron. We'll increase it by small amounts over 3 days to avoid shock to the system." Kellera's inner eyelids blinked in understanding. "Your knowledge of plant biology is impressive. It reminds me of the stories of how you helped save our crops during the Great Blight last season." Linda shrugged modestly. "We all worked together during that crisis. That's what makes this colony special. Humans and Zaxrith solving problems as one community." The rest of her morning passed peacefully. She checked on the new experimental grain hybrids, adjusted growth parameters in several sections, and had lunch with Peter when he stopped by. He brought her favorite, synthetic chicken sandwich with real lettuce from her own hydroponics bay. "How's the environmental system holding up?" she asked between bites. Peter's eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "Just routine maintenance today. Though the air scrubbers in Section 7 need an upgrade soon. I'll put in a request." Linda noticed how his eyes still scanned the room automatically, noting exits and entry points. Old habits died hard, she supposed. But that vigilance had helped forge peace between their species. The Zaxrith had respected strength, and humanity had shown they had plenty of it, along with wisdom to seek cooperation instead of conflict. As the artificial sun began its programmed descent, Linda made her final rounds. The colony's lights dimmed gradually to match the natural day-night cycle that both species preferred. She stopped to admire the view from the hydroponics bay's observation window. The scattered lights of the colony spreading out across New Eden's plains, and the planet's 3 moons rising in the purple sky. A group of young Zaxrith passed by, chattering excitedly about the upcoming Unity Festival. They waved at her with their lower arms, a gesture they had adopted from humans. Linda waved back, feeling content. This was what they had all worked for, a place where 2 species could live and grow together in peace. Little did she know that peace was about to be tested in ways she never expected. The arrival of the Zaxrith warship changed everything. It descended from orbit like a silver arrow, much larger than the usual supply ships that visited New Eden Colony. Linda watched from her hydroponics bay as it landed at the spaceport, its hull gleaming under the purple sky. Peter stood beside her, his hand resting on the window frame. She noticed how his fingers tightened slightly when the ship's main hatch opened. A group of Zaxrith emerged, their armor more ornate than the simple clothes worn by the colony's residents. Their leader, Commander Vexthor, stood out with distinctive red markings on his silvery skin. "They look different from our Zaxrith," Linda said quietly. "They're from the outer systems," Peter replied. His voice was calm, but Linda knew him well enough to hear the concern hiding beneath it. Military caste. The news spread quickly through the colony. The new Zaxrith group claimed they were here for a routine inspection, but their behavior suggested otherwise. They questioned everything, from the colony's power distribution to its leadership structure. 3 days after their arrival, Linda noticed the first changes. The local Zaxrith workers in her hydroponics facility began arriving late or missing shifts entirely. When she asked Kellera about it, her friend's forearms twisted in distress. "The visitors say we dishonor our species by working under human supervision," Kellera explained, inner eyelids blinking rapidly. "They speak of genetic purity and proper hierarchies." Linda felt her stomach tighten. "That's ridiculous. We've worked together for years. Your people taught us as much as we taught you." Before Kellera could respond, heavy footsteps echoed through the hydroponics bay. Commander Vexthor entered with 2 guards, their ceremonial armor making soft clicking sounds as they moved. The local Zaxrith workers quickly stepped away, leaving Linda standing alone by her tomato plants. "So this is the human-run food facility," Vexthor said, his voice carrying a hint of disgust. "How unfortunate that our people must depend on primitive growing methods." Linda straightened her back. "Our methods aren't primitive, Commander. We've combined Earth techniques with Zaxrith hydroponics technology. Our crop yields are among the highest in the sector." Vexthor's upper arms made a dismissive gesture, while his lower ones clasped behind his back. "Acceptable results through inferior means. This facility should be under proper Zaxrith control." "This is a joint colony," Linda reminded him. "We work together here." "For now," Vexthor replied. His eyes narrowed. "But changes are coming. The Pure Systems Coalition no longer recognizes the authority of those who signed the original colonial treaties." The news spread through the colony like a virus. Peter heard about it while fixing environmental systems in the residential sector. He watched as groups of humans and Zaxrith that usually mingled freely began to separate. The easy friendship built over years started showing cracks. In the colony's main market, signs appeared marking certain shops as pure Zaxrith only. The local colonial council called emergency meetings, but their Zaxrith members stopped attending. Each day brought new tensions, new divisions. Linda tried to keep her hydroponics facility running normally, but it became harder. Equipment that needed replacing was held up in customs. Supply requests were denied without explanation. The local Zaxrith workers who stayed loyal faced harassment from Vexthor's followers. One evening, as Linda and Peter walked home, they passed a group of Vexthor's guards harassing a young human vendor. The vendor's cart had been overturned, his fresh fruits scattered across the ground. Peter's steps slowed, but Linda squeezed his hand. "Not yet," she whispered. She felt the combat-ready tension in his muscles ease slightly, but his eyes never left the scene. That night, they heard sounds of arguments and breaking glass from the streets. Peter stood by their window for hours, watching. Linda knew he was calculating, planning, preparing for what might come. She also knew that once her gentle maintenance worker husband had been something else entirely, something Vexthor and his followers couldn't begin to imagine. The peace they had built was balanced on a knife's edge, and it was about to fall. The morning started like any other in the hydroponics facility. Linda checked the growth charts while the first shift of workers arrived. Only 3 Zaxrith showed up for work now, down from the usual 15. Kellera was one of them, moving quickly between the plant rows with nervous energy. The supply delivery was due at noon. Linda reviewed her inventory lists twice, knowing Vexthor's people would look for any excuse to cause trouble. The colony needed these supplies. Their food stocks were running low after weeks of delayed shipments. When the cargo trucks arrived, Linda noticed something wrong immediately. Instead of the regular delivery crew, Vexthor himself stood at the loading dock with 6 armed guards. Their ceremonial armor had been replaced with actual combat gear. "Step aside," Vexthor ordered as he entered the facility. "This installation is now under Pure Systems Coalition control." Linda didn't move from her position at the main control panel. "This facility belongs to the whole colony. You have no authority here." The local Zaxrith workers stopped what they were doing. Keldra moved closer to Linda, all 4 arms tense. Around them, other human workers watched nervously. "Authority." Vexthor's voice carried through the large space. "Let me explain authority to you. Human, your kind are guests in this sector of space. Guests who have overstayed their welcome." "We're not guests," Linda replied firmly. "We're partners. This colony was built by both species working together. The treaties are void." Vexthor's upper arms slashed through the air. "Your primitive species deceived our representatives, made them weak with talk of cooperation and mutual benefit." Linda stood her ground. "If we're so primitive, why are you trying to take control of our hydroponic system?" "Maybe because your pure methods can't feed the colony as well as our combined techniques." She knew she had struck a nerve when Vexthor's inner eyelids flickered rapidly. Several of his guards shifted uncomfortably. They all knew she was right. "You dare question our capabilities?" Vexthor stepped closer. The other workers backed away, but Linda didn't move. "Your time here is over. Remove yourself from the control station." "No." Linda's voice was quiet but firm. "This facility feeds everyone, humans and Zaxrith alike. I won't let you destroy what we've built." Keldra stepped forward. "She speaks truth, Commander. This system works because we combined our knowledge. Taking it by force will only—" "Silence, traitor." Vexthor's upper right arm shot out, shoving Keldra aside. "This ends now." Linda saw the blow coming but didn't dodge. Vexthor's lower left arm struck her across the face, sending her sprawling onto the hard floor. The sound echoed through the suddenly silent facility. Gasps came from both humans and Zaxrith. In their culture, physical violence was considered deeply shameful, a sign of loss of control. Even Vexthor's own guards looked shocked. "Commander," one of them said, "this is not our way." Blood trickled from Linda's split lip as she pushed herself up. She touched her face, looking at the red on her fingers. Around her, she could see phones and communication devices recording everything. "Now you show your true nature," she said clearly, making sure the recordings would pick up her words. "Is this the superior culture you claim to represent? Striking an unarmed person who disagrees with you?" Vexthor's skin had taken on a darker shade, the Zaxrith equivalent of an angry flush. "Remove her," he ordered his guards. "Take control of all systems." 2 guards moved forward, but reluctantly. The local Zaxrith workers were already sending messages on their devices. Linda knew recordings of what just happened would spread through the colony within minutes. As they led her out, Linda caught a glimpse of movement in the upper maintenance walkway. Just a shadow, but she knew Peter was there. Had seen everything. Her gentle husband who fixed things, who everyone underestimated. She almost felt sorry for what was about to happen to Vexthor. Almost. Peter Collins watched the video of his wife being struck for the 20th time. Each viewing made his movements more precise, more controlled. He sat in his maintenance office, surrounded by tools and spare parts, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. The recording had spread through the colony like wildfire. Even now, 6 hours after the incident, he could hear angry voices in the streets. Both humans and local Zaxrith were protesting Vexthor's actions, but the commander's guards had sealed off the hydroponics facility. Peter's computer screen showed the facility's layout. After 3 years of maintaining its systems, he knew every vent, every access panel, every backup power relay. Knowledge that once helped him fix things was about to serve a different purpose. His communicator buzzed. "Got your message." said a quiet voice. "We're ready when you need us." "Thanks, Alan," Peter replied. Alan Barrett had been part of his old unit. Now he managed the colony's waste treatment plant. But like Peter, he had never truly retired. 3 other former team members had also settled on New Eden. All of them had chosen quiet jobs, blended into the background. All of them were now awake and alert. A soft knock at his office door made Peter switch his screen to maintenance schedules. Kelra entered, all 4 arms moving in agitation. "They have changed all the access codes," the Zaxrith worker said. "Linda is not allowed inside. They are already damaging the hybrid crops with incorrect nutrient levels." Peter nodded, his face calm. But Kelra, who had worked with humans for years, noticed something different. The maintenance workers' movements had changed. They were smooth, practiced, like a dancer about to perform. "You are not what you appear to be," Kelra said quietly. "No," Peter agreed. "Neither are my friends." He stood up, checking his tool belt. Each tool could serve multiple purposes in trained hands. "You should stay away from the facility tonight." Kelra's inner eyelids blinked rapidly. "The commander has 40 guards now. They have weapons." "I know." Peter's voice was still gentle, but something in it made Kelra step back. "That's why I'm only taking basic tools. Wouldn't want things to be unfair." Throughout the day, Peter moved through the colony, apparently checking environmental systems. At each stop, he made small adjustments: a security camera that would loop old footage, a door lock that would fail at the right moment, a power relay that would create a perfect distraction. He visited Linda at the medical center. Her face was bruised, but her spirit unbroken. She touched his hand when he sat beside her. "I know that look," she said softly. "What are you planning?" "Just some urgent maintenance." He kissed her forehead. "Things that need fixing." Linda squeezed his hand. "Be careful. Vex Thor doesn't understand humans. He thinks strength only comes from showing force. Then he needs a lesson in human nature." Peter stood up. "Rest now. Things will be different in the morning." As evening fell, Peter made his final preparations. He sent coded messages to his old teammates. They would be ready to respond if needed. But this was personal. This was about his wife. The colony's Zaxrith residents noticed the change in him. They saw how the friendly maintenance worker now moved like flowing water, how his eyes tracked everything, how he seemed to fade into shadows despite his human size. In their culture, there were ancient stories of shadow warriors who could appear harmless one moment and deadly the next. Looking at Peter now, they understood those stories better. Inside the occupied hydroponics facility, Vex Thor's guards patrolled with weapons ready. They watched the main entrances, checked the security systems, and felt confident in their control. None of them noticed the small maintenance panel that opened silently in a dark corner, or the shadow that slipped through it. After all, who would expect a simple maintenance worker to be any threat? They were about to learn why humanity's special forces had been so respected and feared before first contact. Why peace had been the wisest choice. Why striking Linda Martinez had been Vex Thor's biggest mistake. Security cameras inside the hydroponics facility showed everything running normally at 22 o'clock hours. Guards patrolled their assigned routes. The night shift workers, all pure coalitions Zaxrith now, monitored the growing systems. Then the cameras began to show something else. In Section 3, 2 guards disappeared while checking the tomato plants. In Section 7, the lights flickered for 3 seconds. When they came back on, 3 more guards were missing. No alarms sounded. No shots were fired. Vex Thor watched the security feeds with growing concern. "Report," he demanded into his communicator. Static answered him. The facility's main control room felt smaller than usual. 6 guards remained with him, their weapons ready. Outside, the colony's 3 moons cast purple shadows through the high windows. "Check the recordings," Vex Thor ordered. The security officer rewound the footage, showing the moments the guards vanished. In each scene, there was just a blur of movement. too fast for the cameras to catch clearly. Impossible, Vexthor muttered. No human moves that fast. A voice came from the shadows behind them. You'd be surprised what humans can do. The guards spun around, weapons raised. Peter Collins stepped into the light, still wearing his maintenance uniform. His tool belt hung at his waist. He looked exactly the same as he had for 3 years, except for his eyes. His eyes were different now. The maintenance worker. Vexthor laughed, but there was uncertainty in it. Where are my guards? Sleeping, Peter said calmly. They'll wake up with headaches, but they'll live. I'm not here to kill anyone. One of the guards fired. Peter wasn't there anymore. The blast hit empty air. Then the guard was on the ground, his weapon taken apart in seconds by hands that knew exactly how it worked. The other guards moved to surround Peter. He flowed between them like water. Every strike they launched met empty space. Every grab missed its target. And one by one, they fell. The security officer stared at his screens in shock. The cameras showed the truth now. A human moving with impossible speed and skill, disarming trained warriors with nothing but maintenance tools and perfect technique. What are you? Vexthor demanded, backing away. Just a maintenance worker, Peter replied, disabling another guard with a precise strike. Who used to be something else, something your intelligence reports apparently missed. Vexthor reached for his ceremonial blade. Our reports said this colony had no military presence. It doesn't. Peter caught the blade between 2 tools from his belt, twisting it away. I retired, wanted a quiet life fixing things, growing food, being with my wife. His voice hardened. The wife you struck. Understanding dawned in Vexthor's eyes. The human special forces. The ones who helped establish first contact, Peter finished. The ones your leaders decided not to fight because they saw what we could do. The ones who chose peace, not because we were weak, but because we were strong enough not to need violence. Around them, security feeds showed more of Vexthor's followers surrendering. They had seen enough. In the streets outside, humans and local Zaxrith gathered, watching the facility's screens that Peter had patched to external displays. Your guards will wake up soon, Peter said, securing Vexthor's hands with repair cables. They'll tell others what they saw, what one retired human could do with just some tools and training. Think about that next time you mistake kindness for weakness. The colony's security forces entered the facility, led by Alan Barrett. Like Peter, he moved with the same deadly grace, though he was dressed in his waste management uniform. Linda's crops better be okay, Peter said, checking the hydroponic systems. She's very particular about her tomatoes. The local Zaxrith who watched the recordings that night gained a new understanding of their human neighbors. They had known humans could be warriors. Now they knew that the most dangerous ones might be those who chose not to be. Until they had to. News of what happened at the hydroponics facility spread through the colony faster than a solar flare. By morning, every screen showed footage of how one human maintenance worker had overcome 40 armed guards without killing anyone. In the colony's medical center, Linda watched the recordings on her tablet while Peter sat beside her bed. Her bruised face was healing, but she couldn't help wincing when she saw the speed and precision of his movements. You made it look so easy, she said softly. Peter shook his head. Not easy, just necessary. He checked the bandage on her face with gentle fingers. The same fingers that had disarmed trained warriors hours earlier. Outside their room, a crowd had gathered. Both humans and Zaxrith wanted to see the maintenance worker who had revealed himself as something more. But colony security, led by Alan Barrett, kept them away. The Pure Coalition leaders are furious, Alan reported, entering the room. Like Peter, he had shed his everyday worker disguise. His waste management uniform remained, but his posture now showed years of combat training. They're demanding explanations. Show them the footage again, Linda suggested, a slight smile on her face despite her injury. I think it explains everything quite well. In the holding cells, Vexthor and his core followers sat in stunned silence. They had watched the recordings a dozen times. Each viewing forced them to confront their mistakes. "We thought they were soft," one guard muttered. "Living among us, doing simple jobs, following our rules. We forgot the stories," another added. "Why our leaders chose peace after first contact. What their warriors showed they could do." Kelra visited the cells, all 4 arms carrying data tablets. "See these records." The Zaxrith worker displayed statistics from the past 3 years. "While you plan to take over, humans like Peter Collins kept our colony running, fixed our problems, improved our systems. Their strength wasn't hidden. It was being used every day to build rather than destroy." In the colony's main square, humans and local Zaxrith gathered to watch more footage from the facility's cameras. They saw Peter moving through darkness with perfect control, saw him disable weapons and guards with nothing but maintenance tools, saw him end the conflict without taking a single life. Young Zaxrith watched with inner eyelids wide open. "But he just fixes things," one said. "How did he?" "Because fixing things and protecting people take the same skills," an older Zaxrith explained. "Patience, knowledge, precision. The humans understood this before we did." The Pure Coalition's local leadership faced a crisis. Their reports had claimed the colony was defenseless, populated by soft civilians. Now they had proof that some of those civilians were highly trained warriors who had chosen peace, but hadn't forgotten how to fight. More revelations followed. The waste management supervisor, who moved like a combat specialist. The communications tech whose knowledge of systems went far beyond civilian training. The medical worker who knew too much about battlefield injuries. "How many others are there?" Vexthor demanded when Peter visited his cell. "Enough," Peter replied simply. "We came here to build something, not fight. But we're still who we are, still capable of what we were trained to do." Linda was released from the medical center that afternoon. Peter walked her through the colony streets, past humans and Zaxrith, who now looked at them differently. Not with fear, but with new understanding. "They'll think twice before underestimating humans now," Linda said. Peter squeezed her hand gently. "That's not what I wanted. I just want to fix things. Keep our home running. Be with you." "I know," Linda smiled. "That's what makes humans so interesting. Our greatest strength isn't our ability to fight. It's our ability to choose when not to." 2 weeks after the incident at the hydroponics facility, New Eden Colony had changed. The Pure Coalition ship departed, taking Vexthor and his core followers back to their home systems. But they left with more than just their wounded pride. They carried a lesson about humanity that their people wouldn't soon forget. Linda stood in her hydroponics bay, checking the tomato plants that had suffered during the occupation. Most had survived, thanks to Kelra and other loyal workers who had secretly adjusted the systems when Vexthor's people made mistakes. "The hybrid wheat is recovering nicely," Kelra reported, all 4 arms busy with testing equipment. "Though we lost about 20% of the experimental crops." "We'll start fresh," Linda replied. Her face had healed, leaving only a faint mark that would fade with time. Sometimes good things grow better after a hard season. The facility had become something of a tourist spot. Visitors from other colonies came to see where a simple maintenance worker had revealed the truth about humanity's quiet strength. The security footage had spread far beyond New Eden, causing many to reevaluate their understanding of their human neighbors. Peter still worked maintenance, still fixed things that broke. But now young Zaxrith followed him around, watching how he used his tools with the same precise movements they had seen in the recordings. They learned that the patience needed to repair a broken pipe was the same patience that had helped him overcome armed guards. "Will you teach us?" a young Zaxrith asked one day, watching Peter repair an air filtration unit. "About fighting," Peter asked, not looking up from his work. "About choosing not to fight," the youth replied. "About being strong enough to fix things instead." Peter smiled. "That's the most important lesson humans ever learned." In the colony's council chamber, changes were happening too. The local Zaxrith leaders had reinstated the original treaties, adding new clauses about mutual defense and cooperation. They understood now that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their combat skills, it was their ability to set those skills aside for something better. Linda's hydroponics facility became a symbol of this new understanding. More Zaxrith volunteered to work there, eager to learn from someone who had stood her ground without weapons or violence. They saw how she had faced Vexthor, with nothing but truth and courage. "Your mate is a warrior who chooses to fix things," a Zaxrith elder told Linda during a harvest ceremony. "And you are a gardener who fights with wisdom instead of weapons." Perhaps humans and Zaxrith are not so different after all. One evening, Peter and Linda walked through the colony's park, where new hybrid flowers bloomed under the light of 3 moons. They passed humans and Zaxrith working together, playing together, building something unique in the galaxy. "Do you miss it?" Linda asked. "The excitement of your old life." Peter watched a group of children, human and Zaxrith, playing a new game they had invented together. "This is more exciting," he said. "Building things is harder than breaking them. Peace takes more strength than war." Alan Barrett joined them, still in his waste management uniform. "The Pure Coalition is spreading the word through their systems," he reported. "About humans who hide their strength in plain sight. About warriors who would rather fix machines than fight." "Good," Linda said. "Let them understand that humanity's power isn't in our ability to win fights. It's in our ability to make them unnecessary," Peter finished. Above them, New Eden's 3 moons shone on a colony that had grown stronger through crisis. Not because of weapons or combat skills, but because both species had learned to see strength in new ways. In her hydroponics bay, Linda's tomatoes grew rich and red, tended by human and Zaxrith hands working together. They were sweeter than ever this season, proof that good things could grow from hard times, if you were strong enough to keep nurturing them.